Do you have any advice for emerging artists who might be listening to this podcast?
Just keep making work. Like that's, I think, the most important thing. No matter what, just keep making work. Every artist has to have tenacity.
Hey there, listeners, and welcome back once again to the Art Dimensions podcast, Beyond the Palette. I'm your host, Whitney Rosenson, and today I will be interviewing artist Kymm Swank. I'm so excited for this one. Kymm is a self-taught artist living in Los Angeles, California. She works primarily in oils and acrylics, and the bold work she creates explores abstract forms, urban texture, and structure through line and color. She currently lives in downtown Los Angeles, where the transforming skyline and city streets offer her constant inspiration. Hi, Kymm.
Hi, Whitney. How are you?
Good, thank you. Welcome to Beyond the Palette.
Thank you.
How are you?
I'm really well.
Great. That's great to hear. Thank you for participating today and for your time. I really appreciate it.
It's my pleasure. It's be fun.
Yes, it will be fun. Okay, let's dive in. Did you always feel that painting would be a part of your life?
No, actually, I didn't. I always drew, painted, made art, but the way it kind of developed was actually a surprise to me. It was always something that I did, in school, I loved my art classes, like elementary school and middle school. I didn't have anything in high school. I didn't have any other training after that, but I always would draw, doodle, make things. And it was only I was actually in an acting class, and it was a Meisner class. And in a Meisner class, you need activities. And so I started painting as one of my activities. And I loved it. And I kept doing it. And this was when I was in my early 20s. And so I just kept making work. A friend of mine loved the stuff that I was making and encouraged me to show it. And actually went out and got a huge canvas for me, the first large scale work I ever did, and was like, do this for my home. And I was like, great. Okay. I had a tiny little apartment in Hollywood, and the thing with the piece was like 7 feet long, and it took the entire living room. It was funny. But so I gradually started showing work, selling pieces from restaurants and coffee shops, until it actually became a huge focus in my life. So it was a complete surprise. I never expected it.
So it all started from that acting class. That is so cool.
Ironically, yeah.
So your painting career started in your 20s. I don't want to age you, but about how long have you been painting?
So I don't mind being aged. So I've been painting approximately 25, regularly.
A long time.
Approximately 25 years. Yeah.
Yeah, a long time. What are your favorite materials to work with and why?
Oh,
is that a hard question?
It's hard because I love working with so many things. Always love working with oil just because of just the whole sensual experience of working with oil. That's what I first started painting with. It's just such a beautiful, lovely medium, but it's very time consuming. And I also really like working very fast and very immediately. So right now I'm working with a lot of spray paint and enamel and markers and acrylics, and I'm loving that too. I'm obsessed with learning how to control spray paint. This is my obsession of like, okay, I need to figure out how to get these lines down. So that's kind of where I'm at right now. But I mean, it's like I'm really bad. Anytime I go into an art store, I come out with like 20 different things I want to try, all kinds of new materials. So yeah, it's hard for me to say which is an actual favorite.
Well, you did okay, but you said oil. If you have it takes a long time to dry, right? So that's why.
And also, it's a technical medium oil in a way. You have to be mindful of how you mix it. How you create, and so for my more methodical work, that's great. But in kind of the work that I'm doing now, which is much more spontaneous, much more, fast and intuitive, I don't want to think about the chemistry behind oil, which you need to do. I mean, you always need to have that, an archival sense in your mind. But with oil, it can be, a painting starts flaking 10 years later, and you're like, so.
Yeah, in your studio, these, like, are you working on a new series? Are you contributing to a series that you already have?
I'm actually working on a new series. I'm working on a new series. It's a series that I'm doing with, again, actually with all of those things that I just described to you, with spray paint, with acrylic. I was doing a lot of work with flashy the past couple of years, or flash, I guess, flash. I don't know if I've never heard it. I've only seen it written, so I don't know if it's pronounced flashy or flash.
I wish I could tell you. I don't know either. I had to ask you what it was. It's a vinyl based paint. Is that what it
It's a
is?
vinyl based paint. I came to it because I adore the work of Mary Weathersford. She uses it, and it's a way of maintaining a certain level of acrylic paint can break up a little bit sometimes when you thin it with water or mix it with water, and this maintains an opacity that I love. Anyways, so I was working a lot with flashy and water, doing a lot of work with that, and that kind of led me into doing the work that I'm doing now, which starts with kind of an acrylic base, heavily a lot of water. And then I go in with layers of spray paint and then layers of ink. So the final layer is actually a layer of ink on top of it.
Does this series have can you tell us what it's called, or you don't want to let the cat out of the bag?
No, yet. I'm torn between a couple of names. How it started was while I was doing the series of Flashy, which is a very kind of controlled thing that I was doing, specific. I have these other pieces on the side that I would work on, and I would just let myself be free, and just, it would always be another piece on the side where I was just going crazy, because I've so tried to be minimalistic in my work, but I'm actually a maximalist.
Yeah.
Right? So these pieces I started calling my tantrums, because it was like I would go over there and throw a tantrum with paint. And then I started becoming more interested in actually what those pieces were and what I was doing with that, and kind of working with that. So my working title are tantrums, but there's a whole bunch of other titles that I have for the series in my head as it develops, but the working title are my tantrums.
Okay. Well, I cannot wait to see these new paintings.
Oh, thank you.
I did a bit in the introduction, but can you describe the style of your work? Would you say it's urban, it's graffiti art? I mean, how do I?
It's not graffiti art. I want to be very careful, because I'm not a writer. I'm not a graph writer. It's inspired by that, and I tried really hard to use some of those techniques, but I that's not.
Yeah, there's no text in your painting.
Yeah. It's so I wouldn't call it that. I'm inspired. Those guys are amazing, and girls, amazing work. But so while I love spray paint, I definitely don't want to say I'm a graph writer. I'm abstract expressionist. That abstract painter.
Describe your aesthetic in 3 words.
Colorful, controlled chaos.
Oh, I love that.
That's totally how I would describe my aesthetic.
I love that. The 3 C's.
In all the different, I've switched my style of work many, many times. So I've kind of evolved and in very many different directions, which is may or may not be a good or bad thing, but it's how I create. The one through line through all of that is there's always, even in my most minimalistic pieces, there's always an attempt at kind of reining things in. So that's why I'm like, the through line of my work is definitely controlled chaos.
Okay. I love how concise and descriptive that is. What's the, well, I guess you already answered this. I was going to ask you, what is the first creative project you remember? But it's probably that large piece that you did for your friend.
That was the most significant. I mean, I did, it's probably, I actually, the first one that I remember was when I was in elementary school, and I did a painting, an oil painting of my grandparents' dog Jam. So that's actually the first one I actually remember. But the one of the most significance would be the piece that I did for my friend, that really kind of sparked me taking it to the next level.
Okay. How do your emotions affect your painting?
That's a hard one, because that's something that I'm not necessarily conscious of. I mean, it does, especially with these tantrum pieces, more so with the new series that I'm doing, where it's very physical. The mark making is very physical. It's less conceptual. Prior to this, I wasn't directly accessing my emotions so much as I was, a concept or something that I was trying to get down or something I was trying to work on. So of course it influences them. I don't think, but I wasn't directly aware of it. This work, because it came from a place of release, I guess it is influencing it probably more than prior series.
Oh, cool. Would you say your work is gestural?
And it increasingly so. Increasingly so.
Yeah. Okay. All right. Can you tell us just briefly about a few different series that you have?
The Wet Abstractions I started for a show that I had in 2020. So my latest series are the Wet Abstraction series, which is where I was using the flashy and spray paint and water. And then I had another series after it called the Crossroads series. And you can see in the background, there's a large piece, which is the largest piece I've ever done. It's an 18-foot piece in that. That was my latest series. Prior to that, I'm still making work in that series. But then the next series that I'm doing now is the Tantrum series. That's what I've been working on, I think, for the past like 4 months or so, trying to develop that. But I'm still working with the Crossroads series, which is the silver and the black, flashy and water. It's a kind of a fun series for me because what I'll do is I use a lot of water and I let it dry, and then I go in and I work on it. So it's a lot
very layered,
but it's also a lack of control. For me, I'm not necessarily, and that's one of the things I like about it. It's like, what does the water do? How does the paint dry? And I can create little things to kind of orchestrate how it dries a little bit. But ultimately, it's a surprise for me. Ultimately,
just as much the viewer, right?
Yeah. So, and then I go in and I have a way of working on it afterwards. But that's what I love about that series. I love that process.
I'm going to take a screenshot just so the listeners know. There'll be an image of Kymm on my blog in her studio, but the crossover, is it the crossover? Is that what you said?
That one, the big piece is actually called Robert Johnson's Seventh String, which is kind of where the Crossroads series came from. There's a mythology about the blues singer Robert Johnson, who went to the Crossroads and sold his soul to the devil to become a better artist. And he put a seventh string on his guitar. And that was the key way to him being. So this being like, I was so stressed out about making this huge piece. And so I was like, it's good mojo if I call it that. So that's kind of the
I love the title. And it's 7 feet long.
No, it's 18 feet long.
Oh my gosh.
Yeah, it's 18 feet long.
I can't. Yeah, that's huge. It's gorgeous. It's really gorgeous.
Thank you.
Okay. Do you have any advice for emerging artists who might be listening to this podcast?
Just keep making work. Like that's, I think, the most important thing. No matter what, just keep making work. Tenacity, I think, is every artist has to have tenacity. If you're gonna, success comes and goes in waves. Inspiration comes and goes in waves. Everything, but if you just keep making work, that's, I think, the best thing that you can do for yourself as an artist. That's
great. What inspires you to create?
So many things. So many things. I can get inspired by the way rust looks on the side of the building. There's a building downtown. I run by this building and I'm always taking pictures of the rust going down the side because I'm like, that texture is amazing. I did a whole series. One time I took a trip to New Orleans and I did a whole series based on the way the tombs were deteriorating, like the textures on the sides of the tombs in this cemetery that we visited, just because I fell in love with that. I get tremendously inspired by graffiti and kind of, urban writing, just stuff people a lot of people think it's a nuisance, but you're driving in LA and you see writing on signs. So that I love that. I'll take pictures of that and bring that home to the studio where you see all the tagging and the writing on the signs, and then you see the street sign behind it. So
it's two man-made.
Yes.
Two man-made parts, right? But one is more commercial and then one
it's kind of the combination of something that's very free and something also that's very known and graphic. It's interesting. I love that.
Oh, fabulous. Okay, how do you stay motivated to keep creating?
That's a good question, because it's not always easy. I think, and this is probably anathema to a lot of artists, but it's really just discipline. Even if you're not motivated to make the work, or if you're not feeling inspired, or if you're in a bad mood about your art career and you're like, why, everybody's like, why bother? Can I ever say anything original? All those things that artists say that go through our heads. It's really just start making something. And that usually quiets down all of the inner critics or the doubts or the lack of motivation. Just start making something. And
So
that's the
smart.
discipline. Yeah.
What do you hope people will get from your paintings?
I'm kind of selfish when I make work in the sense of I'm not trying to communicate something specific to people. If people have a response to my work,
Mm-hmm. That's what you're hoping they get.
I don't any response. Like if it, some people say they see animals in my work, abstract animals. I've heard all kinds of things, and that's great. Whatever your experience, if you have an experience with it, or if you connect with it in some way, then that to me is the best I could hope for. So
fantastic. Kymm, thank you very,
oh,
very much for
this
doing
is
this.
fun.
It was great. I want to remind the listeners that you can see more of Kymm's incredible paintings at www.kymmswank.com, and it's KYMMSWANK. You can also see her work at artdimensionsonline.com. On the homepage, click where it says artists in the upper right-hand corner and scroll until you see her thumbnail, and then click on that, and that will take you to her page. And you can also check out our Instagrams at Art Dimensions and at Kymm Swank, KYMM. Remember that, not KIM. All right, everybody, thank you for tuning in. I hope everyone has an amazing week. Kymm, you too. Thank you so much. Stay safe and happy creating.